I mean, when you're experiencing something new altogether, or learning something new, or you're trying something new that you haven't, I feel like it levels the playing field for a brief moment between all of you, right? Like you're all experiencing the same thing at the same moment. And there is just something that is wildly birthed in the bonding sphere when you do that.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back.
No,
I felt
Mike.
like that was
Mike, it's all wrong.
Welcome back to the House of Roberts podcast. It's a podcast where we bring you into our loud, crazy Christian home to encourage, equip, and inspire yours. I'm here as always with my beautiful wife, Gabrielle. And welcome back. I mean, prior to this filming, you've been out of town for a little bit.
I know.
And I was solo dad. You were gallivanting around.
I was
Ohio.
Exotic Ohio. Hey, Ohio.
And I'm holding it down over here.
I was sick in bed for a day and a half there with some kind of new stomach virus going around. So let's not pretend I was on the town over there.
You were going crazy.
And I was home for my aunt's funeral, Mike.
No, you were having the time of your life. And I'm here just...
I think that's in your vault somewhere. You're going to hold this over my head for
never. I mean, do I have a golf trip planned now? And am I going to use that, kind of cash in that chip? Hey, you better believe I am. But
passive aggressive.
But I'm glad to have you back.
I'm glad to be back.
You look very beautiful.
No, thank you, my love.
And so welcome home.
Thank you.
We are.
Hey, last episode was fun. Having your parents on.
Totally.
They're so sweet.
I mean, they don't know that because it won't be till, we filmed two.
This is true.
Yes,
hey, there's a little
spoiler alert.
We'll tell you more about it at the end of the episode.
When we film these, we filmed two in a row. And so, Gabrielle, you know what? Good for you.
Good for me.
I normally would be that guy.
You did, but it was me today.
We'll talk more about it at the end here. So just cliffhanger. Hang on.
We have special guests coming.
But we want to talk about these. Yeah. Really, we talked about this last episode. Like at one point when we had gotten away, we felt like there were become some life rhythms, probably what I would call it, or things to focus on in our home that we feel like that we want to make sure we were doing together as a family.
Right.
Well, last time we talked about eating together. That was a big deal. Talked about how we want to worshiping together, Sabbathing together, working together, and then adventuring together. And so some of these, right, we have started to live out and really been. We feel really good about the rhythm we're finding in those things. Some we've tried and they've fallen off, and we need to keep focusing on them.
Sure.
But there have been a couple that, because they've become a little bit more and more about who we are and what we've liked, we kind of want to take a few moments in each podcast to talk about them. And so this one, we want to talk a little bit about adventuring together.
Yeah.
Because that's something that, honestly, where these came from was really when we went on an adventure together as a family. And I think it's a big deal. Families doing things together, adventuring together. So we just want to take a little bit of time, talk about what that means, why that's important, why we think it's important to God, and really at the end of this with some very practical tips on how you can make this a reality. So with that said, Gabrielle, when we say adventuring together, what do we mean? What are we talking about?
I think it's doing something new, right? Something that you've never done before.
Yeah.
And I was thinking in prepping for this, I'm like, how did we catch that bug? Like, how did we catch that adventure bug? And so I was kind of like racking my brain for it a bit. But I honestly think I caught that adventure bug like the first time I left the country for a missions trip. I went on a missions trip to Guatemala, and it was the first time I'd ever, I think was I in middle school? No. I think I was a freshman in high school. First time I had flown on a plane. Okay, was when I was a freshman in high school going international, and it changed me forever. Like I was like my little eyes were just wide, like driving through a new country and seeing how different cultures operated and seeing the beauty all around. Like it was like, I believe that was like the genesis of me becoming like so consumed with like travel specifically, but also just the hunger to experience life beyond what I knew. Yeah. Right. And I know for me, I had that trip and I grew, instantly. So I was trying to think, would you have said the same thing? Would you say like because this has now become a part of who we are, like little or big, we enjoy trying new things, new foods, new hikes, new travel to new states, new nations. Like, we embrace adventure. And so where did that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, I think probably when I first started traveling too.
Yeah.
Which actually was a missions trip.
Yeah.
And it was the summer before my freshman year in high school.
Where was it? Was it Jamaica?
I went to Jamaica.
Jamaica.
And we went on a missions trip there. I was actually talking to one of my really good friends about that trip that we were on, and it was crazy. And it was actually the first time I had been away from my parents, like that far away.
Yeah.
Because I don't think yet I'd gone to like a summer camp. That would have been the next year for like youth camp. So it might have been, or maybe the second time. And it may have been I remember that first night, like calling mom and dad and like tearing up, like not crying, but like tearing up because it was, I mean,
you felt it.
Yeah. You're like, I'm away
from
mom and dad. And I'm not just like at summer camp or a friend's house. I mean, I'd spent the night at a friend's house before all that stuff, but this is like a big deal. But I think you're right. Anytime you experience something new, it expands you and you're never the same because of it. And most of the time, it generally puts a hunger of like, I want to do this more.
Yeah.
So,
because since that moment, I mean, you traveled quite a bit. I've traveled quite a bit.
Right. So we were traveling a lot individually.
Yeah.
And then, when we got married, I mean, eventually we spent, 3 months living in Cape Town, South Africa. Mm-hmm. So that was a value that had been with us for a while. Mm-hmm. And one that actually, when the kids were young, really was kind of on the sidelines a bit.
Well, yeah,
right?
So
because
we
couldn't.
You're surviving.
But it was something that we started to get back into.
Yeah.
And you're right. When we say adventure, what we're saying is not just like going on a cross country trip. It could be big. It could be small. It could be a day trip. It could be learning something new. It could be, it could be something big and going to a different country.
Yeah.
But it's doing something together as a family that's like new for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just, it expands you and opens up your eyes. It's something different from the normal. I think that's what the adventure piece is. It's different from the normal and it makes it adventurous.
Yeah.
And in a good way, it ruins you.
Yep.
Because now you generally want more of that.
You do.
Because of what you've experienced.
You do. Family. It's kind of an organic result too. I don't think you have to force yourself to think, oh God, I guess I got to go on a new adventure. It's like you really organically, you see the fruit in it. There's a hunger that kind of births on the inside of you and you want more.
Right.
Little or big, that's kind of now part of who we are. And even how we're raising family, we're constantly trying to inject new experiences, new moments for us to experience as a family.
Yeah, I think that's important because we always want to raise kids that are that are bold. That, and by bold is like that are courageous. Where we're not here to raise fearless kids. Like fear is just a part of life, right? Yeah. But we want to raise kids that when faced with something new that could cause fear, we do it anyways.
Right, good.
And adventuring does that.
It does.
Right?
It's
like, hey, this is new because it's new is scary. And it's not scary because necessarily it's scary. It's scary because it's new.
Right.
It's new to you. But hey, if you got on the other side of it and you experienced it, now that builds a case for future things down their life where like, hey, I'm scared. Well, why? Because it's new. Well, remember what happened the last time you did something when you were scared?
Yeah.
Well, the adventure you had? Okay, so what's on the other side of this one, right?
Yeah.
So trying to create children that are willing to take some risks, that are willing to live a little bit more courageously. And a very easy way to do that is by introducing new things because new just generally means scary. And it's what sometimes stops people from doing something. It's simply because it's new and it's different. And it's intimidating. Now, I don't think this is just a natural thing. I actually think this is a big deal to God. Right? I think for God, it's important to God that we would adventure and experience something new, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's part of his nature. I actually think God's adventurous. I know that it's kind of crazy. But I mean, if you look at the word of God, it is full of adventures. It is full of God calling people out. I mean, God comes into a dark and desolate world. Nothing is there. And he says, hey, I'm going to create something here, right? He comes into that space and he makes something out of nothing, right? Abraham, hey, you're going to be, the father of many nations. Go. You're going to leave all that you know and you're going to come into this new space, right? Moses, right? You're going to lead my people into the promised land, right? David, you're going to lead, leave the pastures, and I'm going to anoint you king. Let's go do this, right? The disciples, right? Leave everything that you've known up to this point and come and follow me. There is this nature of God where he calls us out into these new spaces. He calls us out into these new territories. And it's actually quite incredible for me to think of it like this, because I love it. He calls us out into new places. He calls us out into new territories. But he never calls us out into those things and just says, hey, now that I've called you into that, you're on your own. He actually calls us out into those things. And guess what he wants to do? He wants to go on the adventure with us.
Yeah, it's very
right?
good. Yeah.
He calls us out into these new adventures, into these new places, not just to leave us there, but he actually calls us out into those new things because it's supposed to bond and bind us closer together. That tells me he's an adventurous guy, right? He's an adventurous God. You know what I mean? Like, he understands the value in stepping out, in stepping into things. And the truth is, for us as believers, we're never stepping out into the unknown. We're always stepping out towards him. But he has this way of leading us down these paths. And I know that it's because it always ends. It's with him, right? It always ends with binding our relationship more close to him. We grow. He knows new things, whether little or big, are going to help us expand and grow and develop. And so I think it speaks a lot about to who he is, and it's important to him.
Yeah, I think when you're experiencing new things, I think it puts awe, like especially when you travel, you'll see something new, experience something new about God's creation. God created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
He puts Adam and Eve into the garden, but he says like, hey, take land, take dominion, cultivate the earth.
Yeah.
Like I didn't just create Eden just for you. I created this entire world for you to explore, make look like Eden. And so I think, one of the definitions of the fear of the Lord is like in awe of God. Like, wow, I'm in awe.
Yes.
And you see even in the book of Acts that they were in awe of
Yes.
God. And when you experience something new, especially when you go visit and you experience a new culture, you see something new in creation.
It's true.
There's an awe.
It's true.
Where you go, wow.
It's true.
Yeah. God's big.
It's true.
And God did that.
Yeah.
And God created that. Like when we were in Cape Town, you see one of the wonders of the world, Table Mountain. And you're just like, and we climbed it, right? And you see it and you're just like, wow, God, you're massive.
Yeah.
And you're big. And it evokes worship sometimes out of you.
It does.
And because it only comes when you're experiencing something.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you said about God's adventures. God, he leads you to adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why I'm so all about following Jesus with my life.
Me too.
Because I know that when I follow Jesus, he will take me places I never dreamed of, by roads I never knew existed. And you consider the disciples in that culture, pretty much wherever you grew up in a town, draw a mile radius circle around their village, and their life would be lived within a mile radius. They generally, mostly, no, there were exceptions, but you would never travel anywhere a mile outside your hometown. That was life. Then you have these 12 men who follow Jesus, and they find themselves all over the world. Right? Like, if that doesn't tell me that God is a adventurous God and calls you to go beyond the mile radius of your life to actually experience something new, right? So
I love what you say too, because I'm telling you, I'm not saying you have to travel the whole world to, grow and go on a venture. But I do know that now, us having traveled quite a bit in our lifetime, I have sensed the pleasure of God, the enjoyment of God when you get to see what he's created for you. I really am a firm believer that he wants us to actually see his creation, and sometimes that takes planning, and that takes, a commitment and self-discipline to get you around the world, right? Because it costs money. But I believe God makes a way for it. He's made a way multiple times, even for us to be able to see the world at this point. But I sense I sense in my spirit so many times. I'm like, man, he is so happy. I'm seeing my eyes are being laid on like more of what he has seen, you know? And so he wants us to see it. He wants us to step out.
Yeah. And he wants us to see and step out now when we have children with our family.
Yeah, I believe that.
And so we've been able to do as much, you know, we've gone, the kids have already been on planes. We've obviously flown back to Ohio. We've flown back to Charlotte. We've traveled in different spots. Our biggest one obviously was a couple years ago when we went to England for 3 weeks with everybody. We took all 4 of our kids. At that time, it was like, what were they? 8, 5, and 4 or something like that.
I can't remember.
Something like that. I think that. So with that said, they've been exposed to some things at a young age. They've started to see some things. I mean, when we went to England, it was awesome, right? So what are some of the things that what do you feel like it has produced in us, in our family? What's it produced in our children? What is your observations?
There's two things. One, I think adventuring as a family bonds you, you know?
Right.
It really does. I mean, when you're experiencing something new altogether, or learning something new, or you're trying something new that you haven't, I feel like it levels the playing field for a brief moment between all of you, right? Like you're all experiencing the same thing at the same moment. And there is just something that is wildly birthed in the bonding sphere when you do that. I feel like those shared moments increase your territory, your relational territory with each other. You know, it's like the more you share of life together, the more you experience these moments together. It's like this small plot of land that just keeps growing, you know? And I just know when we have done this, and obviously England was one of the biggest one. And we saw a lot of fruit, instant, crazy, overnight fruit produced in our children with that one. That's just undeniable, really. But there's been a lot of other moments that we've just done smaller scale things, you know, driving an hour away, or, you know, going someplace, new in our state, staying in a new house. I'm telling you, you put your kids, you stay in an Airbnb an hour away, they're going to grow. There is just something about seeing something new with your eyes. I've never been here before. I wonder what's down the street. Curiosity brews, right? Yeah, they're searching in a new space that they've never seen before. And it is wild. I remember even at a young age, it was like when our kids were not even fully talking yet. If we did a trip or we did something new, overnight, they would find more words. Yeah. Okay. You can't make this stuff up. Yeah. And it would be like, for me, it's like, if I only saw one of my kids respond that way, then maybe it's just because Ford's brilliant. I don't know. But we have 4 kids. And I'm telling you, I am seeing this principle outwork in them, where if I expose my kids to something new, they grow mentally, physically, relationally. They grow. And so the bond that produces, the growth would be my second thing that you see happen on the inside of them and the inside of us. And doing that all together, having that shared moment all together, it's just undeniable, you know?
You're right. There are certain moments that are epic moments that bond you as a family. Yeah. And even if, like you said, it's something very small, learning together. If you go through it together as a family, even if on your way and you're driving to a destination and the car breaks down, and you got to go Chick-fil-A and you got to eat a Burger King and whatever it is, it's a moment. Yes. We bonded, right? Yes. Like it's part of the adventure, right? And so like, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Nope.
And not everything has to go well.
No.
But you're putting yourself in a place where memories can be made.
Yes.
And you're right. Kids just grow. There's that life equation, change of pace plus change of pace equals a change of perspective.
Right.
So anytime you change any aspect of that, your perspective changes.
Yeah.
And things seem easier and more possible when your kids get exposed to something new. It just enlarges their territory.
Right.
So I remember even when we come back from England, the one most impacted by Chet would have been Ford because he was the oldest. And
he would have just been the most aware.
He most aware, and that's
but
why
impact was beyond all.
Yeah, all of them, but in terms of like awareness.
Yeah.
But I remember we came home from England, and like whatever it was, like a week later or something like that, he comes home and says, "Dad, I met with my buddies, and we've come up with a plan to steal the Declaration of Independence."
And he's being serious.
Like, what? And we had just seen that Nicolas Cage movie, National Treasure, where he stole that. And so he's like, "Here, I got my squad." He's like, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to fly." He's like, to DC. He's like, "Is it cost extra to check in baggage?" I'm like, "It does." Like, "Oh, we'll just carry on then. I don't want to spend the money." And then we're going to go, and he's going to be our tech guy, and this buddy's going to do this. And so I'm laughing, right? And he's like dead serious. Like, this is going to happen. He's probably going to do it next year. And so, a couple of the teachers heard about it. They were laughing. They were the ones, I think they had heard about it too. So we were talking about it. And a couple of friends like, "No, Ford, we can't go. We'll be away from our parents. We can't go." Ford didn't
We're
matter.
stressing some of the friends out.
Yeah, we're stressing them out.
Yeah.
And I remember telling that story just as a joke to our senior pastor. And he was laughing. He was like, "But do you understand what happened there?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't, what do you mean?" He's like, your trip to England made Ford think he could do about anything.
Yeah.
Like, if we can make it to England, yeah, we can make it to Washington, D.C. Right? That experience, it actually, it enlarged his journey, but it also it shortened possibility. Like, it doesn't seem that impossible now. Yeah. So we've been here to England. It doesn't seem impossible for me to go to Washington, D.C. by myself. Right. So those things, their world expands and gets smaller too.
Oh,
right.
Man.
It expands. I think that's what I mean to say. Like, it expands because they understand there's a world beyond where they live, but it gets smaller because they realize it's possible for me to experience that. And it's not this massive thing that I have to overcome because I've been introduced to this. And so I think you're right. The major things, it bonds you, big or small, learning something new together or just experiencing something new. And you individually, you change, your kids change. And it's a beautiful thing to invest into. So for us, even one of our rhythms for Christmas, so we try to go every other Christmas is an experience over gifts. Yeah. So hey, 1 year is hey, your gift is you experience this. Right. Yeah, exactly. 1 year we'll give gifts because kids love gifts and there's something about opening up gifts at Christmas. But when we were in England, because that was their Christmas gift, and Ford and I were talking about his Christmas gifts, I'm like, honestly, last Christmas, do you remember any of the gifts you got? And he's like, no. Nope. I'm like, exactly. No way. Yeah. So, but I promise you'll never forget the Christmas that you guys went to England. Yeah. I said, it's a teaching moment. Yes. Do you understand how powerful that is? You forget what you get, but you don't forget what you experience. Yes. And so, I think it's a big deal. I think it's important.
It's a big deal.
Now,
there has to be science to back it up. I am not a big stats girl in that way, but there has got to be science to back up the fact that when you experience something new, what it physically does for you. I never looked into it. I probably should have, but I've never looked into it. But I'm telling you, as a mom of four, what I have seen exposing my kids to something new, what it produces, it is incredibly intriguing. And I want to emphasize, it is not about expense. It is not, yes, please, be challenged in your thinking as far as, plan a big trip, right? I want to challenge you in that because I know it's a core value of ours and we have seen the benefits of that. But I also want to say, don't limit yourself to think that if I can't financially get all of my kids to England or somewhere else, then what's the point? No, the point is exposing them to something new that their eyes have never seen before. Yeah. It does something that expands who they are and grows who they are and creates a moment that bonds you. And like I said, that territory of your relationship, one little small island. And as you continue to share these moments, it continues to grow and grow and grow. And so it's not about money, it's not about that. It's about being intentional, to create these moments.
Yeah. And I remember, like I said, for a moment, it was sidelined for us, but I think we brought it back sooner than I thought we would have. Yeah. And I'm glad about that. And I actually remember why we did that. I remember we were in a staff meeting again with our senior pastor, and he just said something. He said, listen, the moment your kids are born, he's like, you have maybe 18 summers with them before they're out of the house.
I remember this too.
And that arrested me.
Gripping. Yeah, it's true.
I was like, that number like scared me.
Yeah.
Like, because you think my kids are young. Like, what's it matter? And because we had a couple summers, I'm like, but it's just they're too young and I'm tired. And what's the money? And how are we going to make this work? And it's like, we'll just do it next summer. And this summer we're just going to hunker down and make it happen. And he said that. It gripped me.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And we were like into spring at that point. And I remember you and I said, we're gonna plan some stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to make sense, and it doesn't have to be massive.
Right.
We're gonna do a couple things this summer. Even if the kids are a little bit younger, it doesn't matter. Like I thought about, man, we got 18, and now that Ford was like 7. I was like, so I got 11 more with 4.
I know.
Like, no, we're gonna. So I remember it grips me, and so that was why we brought it back a little bit. It didn't matter. Like it didn't matter if crew could fully remember everything. He would have experiences. It's fine. We're going to capitalize on the time that we have.
That's good. Yeah.
And so you have to consider as a parent, right?
Yeah.
You might have 5 left. You might have 2 left. You might have all 17 left, right? But keep that in mind. And I think that's why it really became a value for us.
Right.
So, okay, we should.
Mm-hmm.
How do we?
Right.
I think we've learned over the years some very practical things to like planning trips that we just want to encourage and like share with. It's not very spiritual about these. It's just more like some practical things to go about. How do I start planning and adventuring trips with my kids?
Mm-hmm.
Gabrielle, what would you say?
Oh my.
How would you? Not yet. No, but what were some very practical things? Like, what have we learned?
Yeah, I think be intentional. And I think you just started to harp on this a little bit. Not harp. That's not the word I wanted to use. You just started to expound. Oh my God. That sounded like
Mike's harping over here.
He's harping. Mike, put a cork in it. No, you started to expound on it a little bit. But there's a million excuses that you can give yourself to talk you sometimes out of these moments, right? Like there's not enough money. There's where will we fit it in? The schedule's too tight. I'm tired. There's a million excuses as parents, and it's real. That is so real. It's
going to be crazy. It's chaotic. How much we have to pack, how much stuff we have to bring. Like,
it's work.
I get it.
Yeah.
But
and knowing what you even just said, when you keep that, and that now is a filter of our head and our heart, like we're very aware. And I've prayed this way, and I'm sharing this for everybody who's listening. I have prayed, God, sober me up whenever I'm trying to rush this thing. Because when they're little, you rush it. You're so desperate for sleep. You're so desperate for to be comfortable that you want to rush it because you're just dying to be comfortable. But I have prayed this prayer so many times in motherhood that, God, whenever I'm rushing it, call me out. Holy Spirit, call me out when I'm trying to rush it. And he does call me out when I'm trying to rush it. And so when we live with that filter of, Ford's 9, I got 8 summers left with him. When you do that math, it is incredibly sobering.
Right.
And all of a sudden you become more intentional because of that conviction. And so I know as a family, we have become incredibly intentional at planning it, scheduling it, even from a financial standpoint, saving for it. And so, sit down, have the discussion. It's not too late. I don't care if your kid is, graduating next year. It's never too late to start being intentional with these bonding moments. And so I know for us, we talk about this top of the year. It's become like what are we doing? And I think it's like, hey, don't think you have to plan something every month. Hey, if you're not doing anything right now, plan something quarterly.
Right.
Right. If schedule is crazy right now where you're at as a family, schedule something quarterly. That's 4 times a year. You're intentionally saying, we're going to go here as a family and we're going to do this. We're going to drive up there and we're going to see this and eat this famous taco. I'm making this up. We're going to be intentional 4 times a year to create moments, with each other, So I think a big thing in the onset is like, sit down, have the conversation with your spouse. I think have the conversation with your kids. Our kids are getting a little bit older now to where it's kind of fun because we can kind of say, what do you want to do?
Right.
Like, where do you want to go? What do you want to learn? So start the conversation, because the conversation in and of itself is kind of beautiful to have. I think once you've set those things, you protect it and you commit to it. You know, like when you set those, let's say it's four things a year that you're deciding, hey, we're going to do, experience, you know, or go to these places, you commit to it, you protect it, you know, you get the kids hyped for it, you know. And so that's some of those things that, you know, we found to be helpful in our own home, you know, like when we set those things, nothing's going to interrupt it. Right.
Yeah. Because there are so many, they're not bad obstacles, but there's obstacles to like travel and get out of the house with your kids, especially when they're younger.
Totally.
Because of that, if you're not intentional and if you're not intentional about it, it won't happen.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. At the beginning of the year or mid-year, plan out what you want to do.
Yeah.
I think that gives you time then, like you said, to build a budget around it. Like some parents, some spouses, they're like, oh, we'll figure it out. And then some are like, no, what's the budget?
Yeah, right.
So like, I get that. So plan a budget.
Yeah.
I think even when you think about trips, think no budget, we can do whatever we want, medium budget and tight budget.
Sure.
And like plan 3 different trips and just kind of see like where you go. I know for like, when we thought England was like, we had this conversation before we started planning. It was like, hey, if you could go anywhere, money was no object. Where would you want to go? If we kind of had some money, but not a ton. Where would you go in the United States? Hey, it's really tight, but we want to get out of the house. Where would you go in California, our state, right? So I think in that layer. When it comes to budget, maybe leverage a special event where maybe relatives could pitch in. So for example, for us, instead of Christmas, like we want to do this rhythm, right? Where every other Christmas we're experiencing something new. We're not investing in presents. Well, generally grandparents, aunts and uncles want to give, buy presents for kids. And so for England, we said, hey, instead of buying gifts, how about you give in towards the trip a little bit. You don't have to massive, but like, hey, maybe you're going to buy this experience for them, or, okay, we're going to go skiing. Well, you buy them the snowboard, or something like that. And so leverage certain moments, like birthdays, right? Like where you already have a budget prepared for something, put that budget towards experiencing it. So Ford was turning 9 this year. Yeah. We could have spent a ton of money on all the birthday gifts and a birthday party and the food and all this stuff. Or we decided, hey, he's a big Minnesota Vikings fan. They're playing in Vegas. Let's, instead of giving all the money to go to a party, let's have him experience his first professional football game. Right. And we're going to give to that. Right. We were going to give this money anyways. Now it's just going towards the trip. So from budget, those are some little hacks there that you can do. I think, I'll say this, have some small moments, but then there are certain moments in different times where you should celebrate by going big. Yeah. I don't think you should live that way all the time because of financially, it's probably not smart. But I think, what are moments that like you wanted etched in the memory that we did this at this point? Your kid turns 13 or whatever. There are certain moments you should mark with an adventure. And when you are going to do that, I'm going to give you advice that I read once in a book by John Tyson. And he was talking about setting up moments for your sons when they actually go into manhood. He said there's certain moments. He said, here's the phrase. In those moments, beware the soul-sucking voice of reason. Right. And he said there are certain moments where like reason's going to make you lessen this experience. Yeah. Beware of that. Yeah. Go big. Yeah. Right. And that you can't do that all the time because then you go into debt. But that's why you have to be strategic. Where are moments where you really want to celebrate this moment, and reason's going to say don't do this, but beware of that. Yeah. Go big in this moment. And then, that means you might need to save for a year. That means you might have to say no to a couple things. That might say you have to budget, whatever it is. But there are moments like that you should go big, and it will be beautiful. A few other tips: don't over romanticize these moments with your kids. That's good. Actually. The goal is not to have an absolutely perfect trip. No. It could be a bad trip at times, and really. Don't try to plan a trip where every day is like 100, right? Like new experiencing. Like you don't need that. Like a trip ebbs and flows. And when your kid looks back and they're going to remember the high points, not every point.
Yeah.
So even when we did England, we could have gone forever and done everything, but that wasn't a good rhythm for us. So we would pick, hey, we're at this spot for 2 weeks. Well, during those 2 weeks, we're going to do these 5 things, and they're going to be like every other day or every 2 days. So don't give rest time, give breathe time, especially if your kids are younger. You don't need to see everything. When we were in London, we didn't go see London Bridge. We didn't see the was it the Big Ben, right? We didn't. Why? Because my kid, like, that's just not appropriate for their age. They're not really gonna care. We're gonna have to drive an hour and a half in an Uber. They're gonna hate it. So we adjusted our trip. Like, no, we're gonna go to this area. We're gonna see this thing. We're gonna have this treat, and then we're gonna come home.
Yeah,
because that was right for them. So ebb and flow it.
I like what you said, even about like, don't romanticize it. I think this is a big deal, because you have to know when you're endeavoring to do something new and adventurous. I think especially as the parent, you can put a pressure on it because you've just planned it. You've just financed it, right. So you want it to go perfect, but with family, it's just not possible.
Right.
And so, there's been multiple things that you and I have done. And even with England, it's like, you think about going to England, all the beauty and the amazing moments that we have, but there was a lot of moments that you and I had a decision to make. Are we going to allow what's just popped up, the terrible thing that's just popped up in this season, rule this moment? Or are we going to choose to roll with it?
Right.
And so you just have to know that when you endeavor to do these things, you're all in a new place. You don't know how to completely get around, this new area you've just driven to, or you don't know where the next bathroom is. You've never been there before, right? So that can sometimes try to elevate the stress levels. So you have to be aware of that. Just breathe.
Right.
Just breathe. It's not going to go perfect. But the goal is to create that moment that you don't forget. So even when my kids caught the most explosive, crazy bout of diarrhea in London, that is literally another story to tell on another podcast. Yeah, we could have literally just been like, this is the worst thing ever. How could this? My God, we just financed all this. We could have gone there,
right?
But we didn't. We rolled with it. And you know what? Now that will be a story we tell,
right,
all of our life.
Right.
And we all still laugh about it to this day. Okay. We threw away a lot of underwear on the kids' underwear on that trip. Okay. It's life shared. It's moments shared. And so take a deep breath. Nobody can rob that moment from you unless you let it.
Right.
And just roll, with it.
Yeah. Adventuring together is not going to be Disney magic.
No.
It may not. It doesn't say like it's going to heal everything, but it's going to create some really special moments.
Yeah.
And like you said, I love that. You be gracious with your kids.
Yeah.
Because there's been times I'm like, do you understand how much money?
Yeah.
What I did?
Yeah.
I'm leaving you home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so be gracious with your kids, be gracious with yourself.
Yeah.
Which is why even then the pace of a trip should be cautious. If it's go, your kids won't respond well to that, especially if they're younger.
Right.
They're older, it can look differently. Like older kids, they're teenagers. You guys could go for a while.
Right.
But your younger ones, like, just know that go at a pace that's gonna set them up to succeed.
Right.
And then I just have one more, and this is super basic, but like if you're flying on a trip and your kids are 12 and under, get TSA pre-check.
Oh my.
Like, I know it's super, I'm telling you right now, TSA pre-check. If it's $75 and lasts for 5 years, and if your kids are 12 and under,
are we sponsored by them?
No, we're not. This is not a sponsored ad. They go with you for free, and here's why: if you're TSA pre-check, one, you get to go to the other line that's shorter. That's one thing. But the second thing is, if you're TSA pre-check, you don't have to take your shoes off.
Yeah.
You don't have to take your iPads out. So if you're traveling with young kids, multiple kids, and I don't have to take shoes off of 4 kids and iPads out of 4 kids, whatever, it's worth the $13 or whatever a year is what it breaks down to do that. So that's super basic. But if you're looking to fly and you have younger kids, TSA pre-check.
I love that.
5 years. Your kids go with you. You should totally do that.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So, hey, closing thoughts before we end here on adventuring together, Gabrielle.
No, do it. Just do it. I mean, don't let anything stand in the way of you acting tomorrow on it. Plan something, sit down with your spouse, pray. Mike and I pray.
Right.
we ask God what, to help us dream out the year for our family and different things we should expose our kids to. I can't emphasize that enough. Sometimes you don't even consider that in the planning,
Right.
but I'm telling you, God helps us dream. He's an adventurous God.
Yeah.
Remember that. So he knows exactly actually what is going to be the best thing for your kids in the stage they're in, what's going to bond you guys in that season of life. So ask God what he thinks, together, and just do it. You will see the fruit. You will see growth. You will see your relationship overnight, almost like on steroids, just balloon. And so just make a decision, to make it happen no matter what, little, big.
Yeah. I think what you just said, I think God is pleased when you do it. And I think I do think you enter into some level of blessing and provision when you do that. And we experience that. Anytime we've stepped out.
We have.
With England, we experienced crazy provision to make that trip a reality. Though we didn't have all of it, but God blessed it.
South Africa was the same.
South Africa was the same way. Even with Ford, when I took him to see the Vikings game, we planned it. It's in Vegas. It turned out that my uncle had season tickets. And they were incredible. They were like 14 rows from the field.
Yeah.
And I got them for free.
Yeah.
I didn't plan on, I was planning on doing the trip
no matter what. On paying.
I was paying so much money for nosebleeds. And I felt like just a couple steps, God bless that.
It's good.
And I think God will bless you.
He does.
And open up doors when you're obedient to actually live out and expose your children to some of his creation. Mm-hmm. So do it and enjoy the results of it. Yeah.
Amen.
Let's close in prayer. Do you want to pray? You want me to pray?
You pray.
Okay, I'm going to pray. Father, I just thank you for this world that you created and that you created for us to enjoy together as a family. So, Lord, I pray you'd put, like never before, a desire and a passion into moms and dads to experience new things and to bring their families along. God, I pray you give them direction, discernment of what they need to do. God, you know where they're at. You know the state of their finances, their kids. You know all the nuances of their life, Lord. So I pray you lead them uniquely to take this step. And God, I just thank you for great moments between moms and their kids, dads and their kids as families. I pray families would be bonded in these moments. Adventures would be had. Memories would be made. Families would be drawn closer, God. I pray provision. Lord, I pray for those that would step out in faith and plan and build a budget. God, you would supernaturally bless and provide for their trip, God. And so I thank you that as a result, their children will expand, their worlds will grow. And God, you'll be honored and worshiped, God, because we believe this is worship to you, Lord, that you'll be worshiped in this endeavor. So God, we thank you for it. We bless these families in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And amen. Well, hey, listen, we are closing up. You mentioned it like super early on, but next episode, we are very excited. We have special guests that are coming on. Actually, my parents, Pastor Michael and Janet Roberts, are making a guest appearance live in person in the studio with me and Gabrielle. We can sit down and ask some really great questions and have a great conversation about parenting, about marriage. You're going to so enjoy it. So make sure you tune in for next episode. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been the House of Roberts podcast, and we'll see you next time.